Today we're going to be talking about the very best way to prepare to treat for parasites, and also what works to effectively treat parasites. And most importantly, I'm going to be answering your questions relating to how to treat parasites effectively. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis over 35 years ago. By the grace of God and a lot of work on my part, I learned early on that I was dealing with infections. We didn't know back then what we know today about the different types of parasites that are involved, but today we have a much greater understanding of what we're dealing with. And this is not just for multiple sclerosis. This would relate to any type of chronic disease, because all disease, I would say virtually all disease, there is a infectious component to it. They're all infectious diseases, like all autoimmune, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases. All autoimmune diseases are caused by infections. Yes, you could have an instance where you were maybe exposed to a lot of toxins, heavy metals, for example, but that's not really common. What's most common is that our microbiome gets out of balance, and then we start getting little warning signs, which we ignore because our healthcare professionals, they're like, oh, that's just you, that's part of life, that's part of getting older. And they're not addressing parasites early on. So we go for years and years and years carrying them. They reproduce inside of us. They multiply. They move out of our gut. They move into our blood, into our organs, into the central nervous system. And then some of us have diseases like multiple sclerosis. We get the disease label. But again, with every single disease, they don't know what causes it, and there is no cure. This includes cancer. This includes all autoimmune, heart disease. Like with autoimmune, it's always your immune system is attacking your tissue for no reason, for no apparent reason. And for cancer, it's like, well, your cells are growing uncontrollably. And with heart disease, it's like, you have narrowing of the veins, you have, your heart is not working. It's probably your age, maybe they would say diet, but usually not. And so today we're going to be really honing in on what's truly causing all of the grief that we're dealing with. I have been doing this work we're going to have I believe it's our 10th anniversary next year. And I mean, working as a more like I would coach on the side, but as a more formal, large group setting, coaching people in recovery of chronic diseases like MS. And I personally did not know what huge of a role that different types of parasites caused in multiple sclerosis and other chronic diseases. So we knew about Candida, we knew about Lyme disease, but we did not know about the infestation of larger parasites and protozoa that we're dealing with. We suspected we had parasites, but we don't have good tests. Our practitioners can't help us. Even the integrative practitioners on the whole really don't have the skill to identify different types of other parasites like the worms and protozoa. They are quite good at recognizing Lyme co-infections. They're also good at, Candida and mold, but that's where it stops. And so when we go to these practitioners and we suspect that we have parasites and we talk to them about it and they put us on herbs, we might pass a few worms, but we're still sick. And so a lot of us are starting to hear about different parasite drugs that we should be trying. And I personally think that that's a little bit dangerous, and I'm going to talk about all of that today. So if you have more questions, we have had a lot of questions come in on our website to livediseasefree.com, info@livediseasefree.com. There's also a little place where you can ask questions on our website. So I'm going to go from those questions first, but if you do have more questions, submit them while I'm on this call, and then I will answer them time permitting. So let's first talk about how do we prepare? And is it necessary to prepare for treating parasites? Like, can't we just treat them? Just like if you have strep throat or tonsillitis or bronchitis, can't you just go to a doctor and just take some parasite drugs? Well, the problem is that the people that I work with are really infested with parasites. So let's say if you're somebody who's really healthy, you exercise a lot, you have pretty good mental clarity, you have lots of energy, you don't really have any significant symptoms, maybe a little bit of gas or constipation or a little bit of gut issues, but on the whole, really healthy. Well, then sure, try the herbs. Go to the health food store. Black walnut, cloves, and wormwood are quite commonly used to treat parasites. They might add a few other things to it also, but just know that if you have chronic disease, we have like over 10 years of working with thousands of people by now, that the herbs alone are not effective enough to recover from a significant parasitic infestation at this time. We don't have, like, I'll explain why. But so this is really important because number one, some people will try herbs and they'll think, oh, well, I tried them. It didn't get rid of my disease, so that's not what's causing it. It's like, no, you didn't use something effective enough. Herbs are really helpful. We do appreciate them. They're really good for treating smaller parasites that are in the gut. But once they've moved out into the rest of the body and they're larger worms even in the gut, we have found that herbs alone are just not effective enough. So really important to understand that, because like, what if you're just not using effective enough therapies and you're settling with disease when you just didn't use the right treatments, effective treatments? So when we're really infested, when we have a disease label like any kind of autoimmune disease or cancer or heart disease, or maybe some type of neurodegenerative disease like MS, ALS, PLS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, we have a significant parasite burden in our body. And when I say that, I'm not talking about just worms. Think about a garden. If you've ever tried to grow a garden or grown a garden, you'll know that you plant vegetables and you water it, you fertilize it, and then the weeds start coming up. And so if you don't keep up with the weeds take over. And that's exactly what happens in our gut, because the biggest cause is the overuse of antibiotics. And when you have weeded your garden, did you just have one type of weed in there? No, you've probably had like 20 types of weeds growing. So that's really important to know too, because in your gut, you're not just going to have roundworms. You're not just going to have tapeworms or flukes or protozoa like Babesia or Giardia or other types of protists. You're not just going to have E. coli or Clostridia or Borrelia, which causes Lyme disease. There's like hundreds, if not thousands, of each different category of parasites that can get out of balance. And so when we go on antibiotics, it really gets rid of, very often, a bacterial infection that's making us sick, but it will also devastate our ecosystem. And so then it's kind of like more of a wide open field. And so whatever microbes that we have that weren't affected by that antibiotic will start to grow and flourish, especially if we eat a lot of processed carbs. So by the time we're really sick, we have a significant parasitic infestation. We have terrible brain fog. We have extreme fatigue. We can feel really depressed. We can feel really anxious. We can have pain. We can have muscle spasms, mobility, numbness. All of these things are caused by parasites. We know this through animal studies. Like for over 100 years, they've known that all of these symptoms definitely are brought on by parasites in animals, and they're mammals and we're mammals. Humans are a type of, in the classification of animals, we're very different than animals, but as far as our physiology, a lot of similarities. And a lot of these worms and different parasites can be passed from animals to us also. When we're really infested, we can't just treat. It's really important to prepare, because in order to use effective treatments, you really need to be feeling better. You really need to take some pressure off of your immune system so that you can tolerate the parasite drugs and the herbs and the oxygen therapies better. You can treat more quickly, you can treat more aggressively, and you need to. You need to use killer doses. If you don't, you're just going to make the parasites resistant to the treatments. So this is why it's really important that when you first do this, like if you're serious and you really want to recover from a chronic disease, you need to work with somebody. And that is the challenge, because we don't have a lot of practitioners that really understand how difficult, how challenging it is to treat a parasitic infestation. So I'm going to first talk about like how we prepare and also why it's so important to prepare. We kind of talked about that already. And then I'm going to share with you what really works, like what kind of treatments are helping. And then just type in your questions. I've got a bunch of questions that came into our website, and then I'm also going to answer your questions that you have on the call. So with respect to preparing for treating parasites, so like when we're infested with parasites, we are significantly inflamed. We have a ton of inflammation, and inflammation means our immune system is really fighting something and it's struggling. It's like a war. Like your immune system is your natural defense. It's your good guys. They're not winning the war. It's overwhelming. It's out of control. There's a lot of damage happening. And so we need to start to decrease that. We need to support our soldiers. We do not want to suppress them. And that's what we do in the developed countries. We're using immunosuppressive drugs. And that is the absolute wrong, in my humble opinion, that is the absolute wrong strategy to use. So we want to support the body. The first step that we can do, it's so simple. It might not be easy for all of us, but it's simple, is to change our diet. Parasites love carbohydrates and simple sugars. That is their favorite source of energy. So if you would like to make them more quiet, less active, produce less poisons, so your immune system can kind of slow down a little bit, then you decrease the carbs to a point where that happens. And we have done that. We've done the heavy lifting in that area for you. And it's called the Live Disease-Free Diet. You can find it on our website for free under resources. There is the Live Disease-Free Diet Guidelines. I've got everything laid out there. Go through it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. The more you implement, like every single thing I share with you can make a huge difference. It can help you more than any pharmaceutical. We've seen that with our students. I'll share just a couple things that came in yesterday. Like every week, our wellness champions that are on the journey to recovering from these parasites, they're sharing their updates. So I'm just going to share a couple of updates that came in this week from just diet alone. So very, very important that we are decreasing down to below 50 total grams of carbs per day. The sweet spot seems to be around 30 to 40. The closer you can get to 30 total grams of carbs, people notice, number one, their bladder function improves significantly. Instead of getting up maybe 5 or 6 times at night, they might get up once or twice. And that can happen in as little as 2 weeks or less. We also notice then they're sleeping better. They have more energy during the day. We can notice pain significantly reducing. Spasms can really reduce. I shared, I believe, on my last event I did last week, I talked about the best diet for MS. It's the best diet for any of us that want to recover from any parasitic infestations. But there I shared some other successes from students that came in. It's dramatic. It's like I never get tired of hearing their successes every single week. It's life-changing. And that's such a simple thing that you can do. It's not something you have to pay for a course. You don't have to get counseling, coaching. You don't have to see a doctor. You don't even have to drive anywhere. You have to buy groceries, but you buy specific ones. And it's simple, fast meals, easy, but you're decreasing the food to those parasites. I cannot tell you enough how significant this is, and you really need to try it and then report back to me how much it's helped you. I have people joining in on these calls and just sharing like, oh my gosh, I can walk better. My drop foot is better just from the diet. And they're not even in my program. They're not even following the Live Disease-Free plan yet. They're just changing their diet. So a couple of students, like just with the diet. So one student, I'm going to leave them anonymous because they're just in the program right now. She had a real episode with, I think, a flare, I don't know, last year, I believe. And so it's left her with floaters in her eyes. And she said, just after 1 week on the diet, I have noticed that I don't have any floaters for the last few days, which is amazing, just with diet. And then the second student shared, so this is a student I just talked to a couple of days ago. She just joined. She was following the diet for about a week, But in her history, like, she has been virtually bedridden for about 10 years. I think it was about 10 years, but years. And so meaning that she just can't do anything. Like, she can barely get out of bed, do a tiny bit, go back to bed. Like, that's a horrible way to live your life. Well, 1 week on the Live Disease-Free diet, and she was out of bed for 3 days in a row from when I was talking to her last week. That was her third day being out of bed all day. Maybe she had a rest, I don't know. But like, being out of bed from being bedridden is like crazy. And she said, I've been able to read a book. Like, sometimes we have such terrible brain fog from these parasites and memory issues that we just can't remember what we read. We can't focus, concentrate, and she's able to read. So she is somebody who has, like, she didn't just sit in bed. She went to every doctor. She tried everything. She actually realized she had parasites, and so she started to treat herself, which is not a wise thing to do. And it wasn't working because she didn't have a plan. She didn't know what she was like the dosages, and is this really necessary? But this is what's happening right now, and it really breaks my heart that this is what's going on right now. And I don't really know how to change this other than we need our practitioners to be skilled at this. We need them to take this on. It's a very simple thing. The parasite drugs, the herbs, and the oxygen therapies are safe. They don't have adverse effects. I mean, they could, if you're killing parasites, it's usually that it's a die-off reaction, but that's where you can do things to avoid die-off reactions. So that's all part of the strategy and the plan. So the first student noticed that her floaters are gone after just 1 week of diet. The next student has been out of bed for 3 days after 1 week on the diet and being able to read again. And then the next student had high blood pressure, and just from following the diet and doing some of the oxygen enemas, she is off her blood pressure medication, like just like that. And she hasn't even really started treating. Like, yes, you can clear a few parasites out of your large intestine, which is about 5 feet long, but I can guarantee you she didn't go up that high, like just probably smaller ones. And then there's still 20 feet of small intestine where the parasites like to live. So these are just 3 examples of what we see on a weekly basis when people just change their diet. So I'm telling you this because I want you to try it, but you have to be diligent. If you have 1 cheat in the day, the parasites are happy. You're going to notice no difference. But if you really follow what I have written there, your cravings are going to go away. Your blood sugar is going to become stable. And it really breaks my heart that there are these health gurus that are like writing books about, drink celery juice every day. And so one lady that I spoke with today, she has a history of diabetes, and she's like, yeah, when I drink a big glass of celery juice, it's really affecting my blood sugar levels and my blood health. And I'm like, yeah, it's not, because diabetes and also the other conditions she's dealing with are parasitic. So whenever you take even a lower carb vegetable and you grind it up, you are pre-digesting it, and it releases the natural sugars, which might not be high, but when you're grinding it up, it's going to be more concentrated and the carbs will be released more, and that will all make your blood sugar go up quicker. And again, celery juice is not going to cure you of these parasites. They are not going to leave your body until you treat them. They don't go out. You can't starve them to death. It doesn't matter what diet you follow. It doesn't matter how many supplements you take. You can slow them down. You can slow down the disability absolutely by getting enough sleep, by managing stress, by having daily bowel movements, by eating low carb, being active. Like, all those things are really helpful to slow them down. But once they have established themselves in you, they live in you, they reproduce in you, and some of them can live 20 to 30 years. Like the Flukes can live 20 to 30 years. That's horrifying. And they can lay up to 200,000 eggs in a day. So think about your digestive tract like the surface area of at least a double tennis court, and you can fit a lot of parasites on that area. And of course, it's all crunched tightly and put into your abdomen. It's a total miracle, like that we have that much surface area for food and nutrient and exchange of waste, etc. But the body is truly a miracle. And we have to understand like what we're dealing with, like why just taking 2 parasite drugs that you heard about on the internet, why that is not going to help you and why it could potentially hurt you. So diet is number 1. And then the other part of supporting the body is we call it the checklist for healing, or supporting the body, where we are making sure we have daily bowel movements before we start treating, making sure we're sleeping at least 8 hours per night, because otherwise our immune system is going to be weakened, and we want our immune system to be helping in the fight. We're supporting it, and then we expect it to do its job. And then another thing that's really important is to decrease the wireless radiation and the mold in your environment. Now we're dealing with 5G, right? Which is a lot more, it has a greater impact on our health. So this is where, I'm working behind a computer that has an Ethernet cable. When I'm talking to people, I'm talking on a corded phone. I do use technology, but I use it as wisely as possible. I don't have the cell phone against my head. When I go to bed, our phones are on airplane mode. Our router is unplugged. I don't have any smart appliances in my home. So I'm doing this because I know through the work of wonderful doctors like Dr. Klinghardt that they've studied this, and it actually makes parasites grow faster, up to 600 times faster, and produce more poison. It makes them more virulent. The wireless radiation makes them more virulent, which means they're more disease-causing. Mold, if you have mold in your environment or in your work, your home, you will find that it really suppresses your immune system. Some of the mold toxins are the strongest toxins in the world. They're really nasty and deadly. So we want to make sure we do not have a mold exposure in our home or our workplace. So those are the 2 big environmental ones. There's other things we can do too, but we also look at our blood work and we support, like if we have low iron, blood iron, we make sure our thyroid is in good shape. We look at our blood work, and sometimes we can kind of see like, oh, it looks like I could potentially have a parasite that affects my red blood cells. If your red blood cells are lower count, if they're bigger in size, there's less of them. Anemia is another one, to support that you have enough iron so that you're able to like be healthy and your immune system can function better. So all of these things are really important before you start treating. So there are some people that are virtually symptom-free before they start treating because of all the work they've done. But if they went back to eating, pizza and beer or a bunch of candy or ice cream or whatever, is like putting gas on a fire. Those parasites are still there. It wakes them up and they just go bonkers. And so then you end up with symptoms again. So this is why we first support the body with diet and all of the things we have in the checklist for healing. And then we're ready to treat. So our students are ready to treat when their carbs are low enough, they've noticed significant symptom improvements, they're having daily bowel movements, and they're sleeping at least 8 hours per night. They're still working through the other items that I mentioned, but they're ready to start treating. So this is where we have found that even things like raw garlic can be incredibly helpful for people. So I've known this for years and years. Like garlic is like a superfood, incredible. It has huge antimicrobial properties. So with some students, like as they are getting access with their practitioners and getting energy tested with the parasite drugs, they're starting to use like herbs, and they're using the oxygen type therapy, the oxidizing agent that I can't see the name of here. You can find out more about it on our website, or you can find it on Rumble, but I can't talk about it here because it still is censored. It's getting better. There are many, many practitioners that are starting to speak out about it, but I don't want to lose all the valuable resources I have for you here on, with that. So I'm not going to say the name of it, but it's basically bringing oxygen into your body, and your body uses oxygen to kill parasites. So it's just, we call it layering of therapy. So the parasite drugs are not a magic cure. They're not going to cure you by themselves. But when we do this prep work, and then we'll use the parasite drugs we test well for, and then we use also the oxygen therapy, which is really cost effective. There are a number of oxygen therapies we could use, but this one is really versatile. We can do a lot with it, and it's the cheapest, is like really cost effective for people. And then the antimicrobial herbs. So with all of that together, this is where we are seeing magic happen. It's not magic, it's just we're getting more effective and efficient at treating the parasitic infestations. And we're getting better all the time. So now we're kind of honing in on, okay, we know that you have flukes because we see you're passing them and you test well for those parasite drugs and they're working for you, but let's also hit the larva with certain herbs that are used actually to treat the larva of flukes. So we want to hit the larva and the adults because one medication may not hit or treat or kill every part of the life cycle of a specific parasite. So let's go down to what really works. So it is really strategy. What breaks my heart is I see like one student that just joined, I think last week, out of desperation, like because they hear ivermectin is so helpful for MS. So is ivermectin the key parasite drug for MS? So people are buying, they're going and getting horse paste. They don't even know how much they're taking. I know one person, not on my advice at all, took too much and ended up in the hospital, got really, really sick. You can get sick from these parasite drugs. All drugs have an LD50. So number one, you could take too much and you can make yourself sick. Number two, you might not take enough. So if you do have a parasite that is helped or treated by ivermectin, then if you don't take the right dose, you will make that parasite resistant to ivermectin and it won't work for you in the future. You don't want to do that. Resistance is awful. The way that we're doing it, because we're hitting them on different angles and we're using combinations of parasite drugs, that really decreases the chance of resistance. But some of these parasites can become resistant even to artemisinin, which is wormwood. So malaria, for example, is becoming resistant to artemisinin, and that has been a really effective treatment for it. So it doesn't matter. Like we used to think herbs were less likelihood for the parasites to become resistant to it, but apparently that's not the case. So we want to use strategy, understanding, like I've shared a few things with you, knowing that they can lay a couple 100,000 eggs in a day. They can live for years. Then there's also the larva, the immature form, that you might have the adult tapeworm in your gut, but then the little larva, the immature little ones, they move into your blood, they move into your organs, they move into the central nervous system. They can form sacs there. So it's really important to understand what you're dealing with. Ivermectin, we have not worked with a single person where ivermectin has cured them of multiple sclerosis. Ivermectin is not a cure for multiple sclerosis. I'm telling you that. If it was, I promise you I would tell you, but it is not. And it's not even the most helpful parasite drug for MS. And with our students, they test well for 3 to 5 parasite drugs. And they're not taking them initially all at the same time, but they do eventually take them together because there's a better killing effect. I've shared this numerous times, but I'm going to share it again because it helps you to understand. Because a lot of you are like, if I could just get my hands on ivermectin and fenbendazole, that's what the big craze is now, fenbendazole and ivermectin. And the vast majority of my students don't even test well for fenbendazole. Yes, it does treat roundworms. Yes, I used it on my horses. Last weekend, I saw a couple of big, ugly roundworms that came out. Absolutely. Ascaris, like really nasty. Made me a little nauseous. But we just don't see that they're the main treatment. For certain things, like there's a certain type of cancer where one gentleman, it put this incurable cancer that was going to kill him, it put it into remission. Yes. Does it treat all cancers? No. Does it treat all parasites? No. So each parasite drug will only treat specific types of parasites. And that's the important thing. So if you have flukes, ivermectin is not going to touch them. If you have certain tapeworms, ivermectin is not going to touch them. And so you could be taking a drug just because you hear that it's popular and it's not doing anything for you. Maybe it would have if you did use the right dosage and you did it properly a little bit, but you're still going to have the MS, unfortunately. It doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier, so we know that with the little tiny filarial worms that get in the central nervous system, it's not going to get there. So this is why we should be working with doctors, but we don't have doctors that will help us. Very, very few, which is really unfortunate, and that is the next phase of Live Disease Free, is to really support practitioners to learn the basics. It's not hard, but we can share all of our knowledge and wisdom with them so that they can, like, instead of us just helping a certain amount of people, then each practitioner can help hundreds of people, right? And that's really where we are going to bring a change to healthcare system. That won't happen in every country. It won't happen in Canada right away because we have a dead grip on our healthcare system here. It's virtually impossible to treat parasites in Canada. But in other countries like the United States and others, the doctors have a little bit more autonomy and they have more access to things. So the change will come more quickly through certain countries like even the United States versus Canada. Layering of therapies is really important. So like what we will do is I mentioned how to get ready. And then I mentioned like while we are, figuring out which parasite drugs we test well for. And that's one of the questions, I'll just address it here right now, is like, what are the best tests for parasites? Well, we don't have good tests for parasites. The very best ones will pick up maybe 10% of what we have. They usually don't pick up the parasites that are causing the most grief for us. So you could be tested for Borrelia, for Lyme disease, and it might show that you do have Lyme disease. Usually it doesn't. Usually it's a false negative. But even if you do have Borrelia, which is not good, is that what's causing your greatest symptom? Or are the bigger worms infecting you with Borrelia? Was it really a tick bite or was it a mosquito bite? Or, if you keep focusing on treating Borrelia, are you going to get better? And a lot of people are, no, I've been taking antibiotics, working with a Lyme later doctor, and I'm still sick. I've been treating Lyme disease for a long time and I'm worse off than before. The people that have Lyme disease in our experience that have worked with us, they have a lot of larger worms also, up to 2.5 feet or more long. And so if you don't treat the larger parasitic worms and they carry Borrelia, even those small filarial worms in the central nervous system of every MS subject tested had Borrelia in it, lots of Borrelia. So if you don't treat the worms and you keep getting reinfected with Borrelia, what good is the antibiotic? And most of the antibiotics work in your blood. They're not getting deep into your tissue where the chronic Borrelia infections are. It just hasn't been successful. So when people that think they have Lyme disease, when they treat parasites from big to small, they are going to treat Lyme also, but they're knocking back all the big worms. They can recover from Lyme disease then. And then they go, oh my gosh, like when I'm passing these big worms, my symptoms are improving so much. Was it Lyme that was causing my symptoms? Maybe I have some Lyme that they picked up, but was that really the biggest culprit that made me feel so bad? The jury is out right now, even with multiple sclerosis. Like, I was just speaking with another person that I'm supporting, and she's she's just a good friend of mine, and she's like, but the naturopath says it's Lyme disease. And, he treated me for like 3 days in British Columbia, they can treat with the parasite drugs for he gave her a prescription for 3 days of 2 different parasite drugs. And she knew to do at least 10 or 14. And so she was doing this enemas before and after. And he's like, oh, I don't pick up the parasite anymore in you. And now it's Lyme and we need to, get you treating Lyme. And I'm like, you're not done. Like with our students, like with what you're passing with the worms, like you still don't feel well, you're not done. And so sure enough, she's been doing more enemas and she's passing worms and sharing that with the naturopath. Like the naturopaths just don't know. Parasite, like these worms are really challenging to treat. This is from a lot of my students. So my students come to me with a lot of either neurological diseases or a lot of neurological symptoms or autoimmune diseases. And they easily pass 200 worms that are, like anywhere from 6 inches to 2 feet long, and they're still counting. And then, in the process, like, is this ever going to end? Like, am I ever going to get rid of them? And yes, you can. And this is like over weeks, not over a few months, but not years, right? And it all depends how infested you are. And this is why it's so important to treat early before we become this infested, before we have hundreds of worms inside of us. If you think about the size of a double tennis court, you could easily fit way more than 200 worms on that, right? But what's so shocking is how are we still alive? How are we still functioning? Like some of us are barely functioning, but it is so shocking. And I do share, tastefully, I do share parasite pictures. Go to our website, livediseasefree.com. I have a blog there, and there are a lot of blog posts. So you can do a Google search of live disease-free and flukes, live disease-free and roundworms, and you'll find a bunch of pictures there. I would love to just flood the internet with like a bunch of pictures, but I'll probably get censored and shut down. And just to show, like, people don't understand what they're dealing with. They just think, well, I heard ivermectin and fenbendazole from this doctor that it's really going to cure the parasites. And so they take an amount that I don't even know if they know what they're taking, as far as they got the dosages from that doctor that's online. I don't even know who this doctor is. I've just been hearing a lot of people with those two drugs. And like, again, you can make yourself sick, or you can end up making those drugs, those parasites, resistant to it, and they're not going to help you in the future. You need to keep those therapies if you need them in the future. You don't want parasites to be resistant to anything, because that is what takes us out at the end of our life. When we are in a care home, if we end up in a care home, I don't want to be in a care home. I'm doing everything in my possible way to stay out of them. But when people are in care homes, they are infested with parasites. When you walk down the halls and you smell poop, they're all wearing Depends. They're all infested with parasites. They take us out at the end of our life, right? That's when our body can no longer fight them off. And so we have to appreciate that it's a lot more involved than popping a pill, right? And obviously, if we treat early and do prevention, like what we do with our animals, like with our horses, like it's 3 times a year, doing that like since they're young, and even when they're really young, treating them a little bit more often. And of course, building up your health promoting microbes too, and building a healthy lifestyle. All of that is important. But what's happened is that I've shared a blog post, The Great Healthcare Deception, is that there was a time in the 1950s, 60s where we shifted from the doctors really felt that diseases were caused by infections, by different types of parasites. And then all of a sudden, our healthcare shifted to autoimmune disease. Everything is autoimmune disease. Your immune system is attacking itself for no reason. Doctors didn't believe that before the 1950s. Why was there that big shift? They influenced the education of our doctors, and this was to bring on this new healthcare industry where we are really, it's lucrative. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry where we are suppressing the immune system, but we are not treating the cause anymore. We're not even looking for cures. We're looking for better ways to manage disease. They're not interested in looking at all this research, and they're the ones that are dictating how we diagnose and how we treat disease. So this is why we're stuck. So you can either continue down that path, or you can be like the rest of the wellness champions where they say, no, and the people that work with me, they're like, I knew that was not right. I knew that was, those immunosuppressive drugs were not the way to go for me. You need your immune system. It defends you from infections. It keeps you alive, right? And it's not turning on you. You are a healthy person. You just have parasites. That's all. So once you get the parasite burden down, your body just operates like it's genetically programmed to. It's genetically programmed. It's like a program that it knows how to regulate everything. And so just support it and treat the cause. So layering of therapies, we talked about how important it is to use like a combination and timing and dosages. Like when people are ready to treat, when they feel so much better, they can work in like 3 parasite drugs at one time for the first treatment cycle. And then they can also possibly add a herb. And then they could also be doing the enemas, and they're flushing out the worms quickly. And then over the next treatment cycle, they can combine all of the other parasite drugs that they test well for. But before, like years ago when we started, people would herx on herbs, like oil of oregano. Some people could be like, I can't take it. It's just making me sick. So we call that angry worm syndrome, where it's just aggravating the parasites. So if you take a treatment that is not effective against a parasite and it's aggravating it, you will feel a lot worse. Your symptoms will feel worse. So stop it, fully recover, which takes 1 to 3 days. It's kind of like you poke the bear, you frustrated the parasites, and then just you'll have to use different strategy, right? And you will recover. So then we do multiple treatment cycles. So we normally will treat the larger parasitic worms and protozoa for 10 to 14 days. 14 days would be better. Sometimes 3 weeks. It depends on the individual. Like if they're using 3 parasite drugs and they're like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe the change, then they might do it for 3 weeks, as long as, and we also check liver and kidney function. All these poor people that are just buying these parasite drugs, they're not even checking their liver and kidney function. And the parasites, they love to go into the liver gallbladder meridian. They can cause your liver enzymes to go up. You have to protect your liver. You have to protect your kidneys. Once you damage either, you are in deep trouble. So this is why our students, they get ready to treat. They're feeling a lot better. They get their blood work done. They're checking liver and kidney function. It's fine. They do a treatment cycle, and a small number of people will notice that their liver enzymes will go up. That is because they have started killing off parasites in those areas. Then they take a break. They don't just carry on, right? And so they take a break. They take milk thistle, and it settles down within 2 to 4 weeks at the most. Then they treat again. And with each subsequent treatment, the liver enzymes settle down, and then they're totally normal. So it's not that the parasite drugs are causing damage to the liver. It is that the parasite drugs are treating parasites in the liver. There's inflammation in the liver. And so this is why we need to really protect our liver and our kidneys. Super important. And to know that like some parasite drugs will cross the blood-brain barrier and others won't. So ivermectin is not going to cross the blood-brain barrier. It's not going to treat those little roundworms in the central nervous system. It's not going to treat if you have tapeworm larvae there. It will only treat certain roundworms and other types of specific parasites. But sometimes there's a synergistic effect too. So we find that albendazole and ivermectin together, if people test well for it, it can be a better killing effect. So this is like 1 + 1 = 4 instead of 1 + 1 = 2. So there is so much to this, and this is why I'm really hoping to answer your questions, give you clarity, help you to understand that like if you're dealing with chronic disease or you're on the verge of it, it's really important to get support while you do this so that you actually treat and recover successfully. So a couple of successes in people that are at various stages in treating that came in yesterday. So number one student, he did his first treatment cycle of, I believe it's 2 parasite drugs. No, he did 3. He did, I'm not going to say which ones because I'm going to get, Pam said, this will work for this, but no. So he did first 3 parasite drugs, helped him significantly, passed a lot of huge worms. He doesn't have MS, but he has a lot of other serious symptoms. And then he also started to take this oxygen therapy orally, and he could have done it earlier, but he only did 2 activated drops in a full liter of water. And almost immediately he said that he just felt the oxygen going into places, alleviating his pain in his feet and in his hip, and he was walking better. So he did do a lot of prep work before, and he has started to treat. So it's not like he's a really sick person who just has brain fog and feels like death and just starts taking this. No, we don't start that way, even with the oxygen therapies, because when you're overburdened with parasites, then if you start treating, you'll feel horrible. You might end up in bed, right? And we don't want that. So the next student, to be honest, I didn't know if I should support her or not a few months ago because she was so sick. I am not a healthcare professional. I'm just a coach, right? And she was so sick that I'm just like, I have a huge faith in God, and I just like, Lord, I will help her if you want me to. Like, I'm always up for the challenge, but like she couldn't even eat raw garlic on a spoon and she would herx. She used that oxygen therapy, like super diluted, spraying it on her skin, and she would herx. Like, I'm talking about tremors, vibrations. She had a history of seizures. Like, she was like, some of the people that I talk to, it's like they're on the verge of dying. And she's a healthcare professional. So I'm just like, if you feel this, that you want to try this, fine. And so she went a little slower than the average students, but she is just so persistent, and she tried to make changes with the diet and it wasn't working, and she was up and down and up, and she finally got the diet in place. And then she was like literally just like spraying the oxygen therapy on her skin, and she was herxing, and then she would just let it settle down, and she was just doing that. And then she worked up to the simplest parasite drug, 1 dose a day, and she would have like these little hercs, but she was managing them like with the diet. She had improvements, and so she was making them more quiet. So it wasn't killing her, but it was like, it was super stressful for her, for me. I just remember that. And then she could do 2 doses of that parasite drug, and then 3 doses. And then she could start doing water enemas with sterilized water. And then she could start to do really diluted these oxygen enemas with sterilized water. Don't ever do an enema unless you have sterilized water, because otherwise you're infecting yourself. And then now, like, she has passed a number of flukes, and flukes are so incredibly pro-inflammatory. They are so common in chronic disease. And I didn't even know anything about it other than, we talked about it in university for like a split second, maybe a blood fluke, saw a picture of it, and that was it. But blood flukes, liver flukes, intestinal flukes are so common in chronic disease. They cause so much inflammation, edema, like swelling, pain. They're just the nastiest. And they live 20 to 30 years. That's their lifespan. I'm talking about they're out of your body then. I'm talking about a worm can live for that long, right? And they can lay 25 to 200,000 eggs in a day. So now she's starting to do her online business. Like, I'm just so proud of her. Like, these are the heroes that I work with. And I'm going to interview her, and you guys are going to hear. So she's not even done. Like, she's like scratching the surface, but she's has hope again, and she's starting to feel so much better. And I can't believe the turnaround in her. Like, blows my mind, because like, if I had said, I'm sorry, there are clinics that if you're too sick, they won't work with you, right? And I'm not a clinic, but I'm a coach. And it's like, how can I say no? Like, I have to do my best to help people. And so I am so tickled pink for her. Like, I cannot believe it. And it just, again, shows like how significant these flukes are. And they're probably, I can't remember the exact length, but they're 2 to 3 inches long at least, or maybe 4 inches long. And they're fleshy and they're nasty. They're just awful. So that is her. And then another student in the program, he has been like, he's very independent. He doesn't need a lot of support. He's just following the plan. He's been doing the parasite drugs. He's been passing a ton of, he calls them monsters. They're like, he has a history of multiple sclerosis, and they're like 3 feet long, like they're huge. And he's been doing clonics and also the oxygen therapies and using certain parasite drugs. And his speech has improved, his balance has improved, his mobility has improved. He just shared with me that his feet are he's dragging his feet much less. He's able to lift his feet up a lot better, and he's sleeping. He slept a full 8 hours straight last night. He said, life is slowly turning into a miracle. All praise to the Most High God. Absolutely, I totally agree. I believe that we're doing this work by the grace of God. I am not like this special person. I beg for help. I beg God to help us, to guide us, to direct us, to give us his wisdom. I do a lot of research. Of course, we have to do the work, right? But I believe it's by his grace that we are having such amazing success, that we have such an effective plan. So this is like, what do you want? Do you want recovery, or do you want to mess around, potentially hurt yourself, potentially use treatments that are going to become, the parasites will become resistant to it because they weren't the right treatments, the right dosages. And this is what happens, these students, this is what happens when you have somebody looking over your shoulder and saying, have you thought about this? Have you tried this? What about this? And it's troubleshooting, and that's really what makes all the difference, because our life is short, right? And we want to live our life and we want to recover as quickly as possible. So I'm going to go to questions here. I've talked a lot, but I hope that it's helped you because, and I'll tell you some of the like I'm not withholding any information for you, but I'm not telling you that these are going to cure you. So common parasite drugs are, I've shared them before, albendazole. You have to make sure you check liver enzymes because that does cross the blood-brain barrier. It is metabolized by the liver. It can elevate liver enzymes. Like I said, it will cross the blood-brain barrier. It treats roundworms. It is helpful for flukes. It's not the main treatment. It also is helpful for certain tapeworms. And ivermectin, we talked about that already. And then there is Alinea, which is Niclosomide. That is more of a broad spectrum parasite drug. A lot of practitioners really like that one. Is it a cure? No, it's not a cure. By itself, we have not found it to be a major cure, but it can be helpful depending on what you have. So it has some antifungal properties, anti-certain tapeworm properties, anti-roundworm properties, and even, I said the antifungal, but protozoa, like certain things, like it's not the main treatment for giardia, but it can be helpful for giardia. So that's nitazoxanide. And then there is praziquantel, and praziquantel is really helpful for a lot of people. It is more for the flatworms, for the tapeworms and the flukes, but it disrupts or damages the integrity of the outer coating of even roundworms. So it's kind of like a detergent substance. And so it's really helpful for tapeworms, for flukes, for roundworms even. It has overlap. And then there's pyrantel palmate, which is sometimes called combantrin in some countries. Make sure you don't have any sugar in any of these. Like I think combantrin or pyrantel palmate, you can buy it as a liquid. Again, I would not buy things and just mess around with them. So, but again, this is something that's over the counter in Canada. We can buy combantrin and we can treat pinworms. So they will let us treat pinworms, but they won't let us treat any other worms because then we wouldn't have MS, we wouldn't have cancer, we wouldn't have arthritis, we wouldn't have diabetes, we wouldn't have this whole multi-trillion-dollar industry. We wouldn't need all the specialists, we wouldn't need all of the technologies. Yes, sometimes it's important, but the disease-modifying maintenance drugs for the rest of your life, there would be no purpose for that, right? Because you're using more effective treatments to treat the parasites. So that's praziquantel. More recently, we found, also niclosomide. That is more for tapeworms, and it could have other applications also. There is also triclobendazole, which is more for liver flukes. And then we found too that like myrrh is a really helpful herb. There's a medicine where they use concentrated myrrh for the larva of flukes infections in countries like the Middle East probably, or maybe Africa. So I don't know if it's still, it's a brand name, but I don't know if they still have a patent on it. But again, it would be a certain amount of myrrh. If you just do a little bit of myrrh, you might not notice any difference, right? So myrrh seems to be really helpful for a lot of different types of microbes, but wormwood is also really helpful. There's a couple of different wormwoods. There's sweet annie, and then there's just the absinthe or something like that, but just the regular wormwood you find in a lot of health food stores. So those are kind of, I would say, the more forefront help. So like for our students that are really sick, if they were just to go like on black walnut, wormwood, and cloves, it doesn't really do a lot for them. They might pass some parasites, but they still have their symptoms. But it's really a combination. And then this oxygen therapy, like everyone needs to know about this. Everyone needs to know about this oxidizing agent. So please go and watch my, like how to use oxygen to treat parasites. It's on Rumble, or go to just do a Google search of live disease free and treating parasites with oxygen. You'll find my blog post. You can find my notes on the blog post. You'll always find the condensed notes, and then the videos are shorter than these videos because I go through Q&A. But I'm sharing this with you because it is a crisis in this world right now with how many people are dealing with parasites, how infested they are. And then also we had that epidemic or pandemic that came through a couple of years ago. And the consequences of that has been a lot of immune suppression. So our immune system is not dealing with the parasites as well either. So we do have a real crisis, but you have to, in order to get real success, you really have to work with somebody. So those are some of the more, and then for treating fungus, if you have more of a candida history, fluconazole, the brand name is called diflucan. That one is more helpful but again, you have to be really careful because it's metabolized by the liver. You can't mix antifungal meds with other meds. If you look them up, they have many, many, many negative interactions. So you have to be really careful that you don't cause damage inside of you. And the same thing with if you have mold issues, then very often it's called itraconazole. That's the drug, the generic drug, and the brand name might be called Sporanox. That can be helpful for that. And so we treat 10 to 14 days, better 14 days of the larger worms and the protozoa. Then we treat the fungus. We knock it back because people always have fungal overgrowth when they have disease and when they have parasitic infestations, and it needs to be knocked back. So we treat it with these fungal medications, and then, or the students do, and then they do a break week. They take a break from all the parasite drugs, but they will still use the oxygen therapy and they will still use herbs. So they're still putting pressure on the parasites. That's one treatment cycle. And they just go through as many treatment cycles as necessary until they are symptom-free for at least a couple of months. And then once they have decreased the burden of parasites in their body significantly to the point where they're living disease-free, then what it's about is maintenance. Then it's like when you have high energy, when you sleep really well, you go lay down and you fall asleep and you wake up in the morning refreshed, and you have high energy during the day and you can skip up the stairs and you have a positive outlook on life and you don't feel anxious, you feel peaceful inside, and your gut feels like quiet. It's not rumbling, it's not gassy, you have regular, well-formed bowel movements, then your microbiome is in balance pretty well, right? And as soon as you start noticing like, oh, I've been a little more gassy or I'm just more tired, I'm not sleeping as well. Oh, it was a full moon and I woke up 3 or 4 times. It's time to treat parasites. Your garden is getting a little weedy again, just like when you water that garden, you've planted your plants and they started coming up and you've got rid of all the weeds. And you water the garden, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, luckily with us, it's not quite that bad that we have to do that much work, but the weeds are starting to come out. And if you treat them when they're little, and you treat them periodically, and you keep building up your good microbes, you can add, I'm sure, decades of quality life in your golden years. Okay, I'm going to go to questions here. All right. Hi, Justin. What are the typical parasites you find in the brains of MS sufferers? So I can't look in the brains of MS sufferers, but Dr. Alan McDonald sure has, and he has found small roundworms in the central nervous system of every MS subject. He has found tapeworm larvae, so the immature form of tapeworm, we call it neurocysticercosis. He actually found 2 developing tapeworms in 2 different MS subjects. He found developing tapeworms. Could you imagine if they were growing in your brain? So these are all people that had a firm MS diagnosis. They passed away. Their remains were kept for research in brain banks, frozen. He had permission to examine them. So why? The experts that are supposed to be finding a cure, why are they not doing this? How hard is that? To examine the spinal fluid for parasites, to have some parasitologists like Dr. Alan McDonald do this. There's something really wrong here. And you guys need to look into this more. And so the filarial roundworms, tapeworms, in those little roundworms, they were loaded with Borrelia. He found Borrelia in the spinal fluid of MS, which is Lyme disease. He found Borrelia in the myelin sheath of nerve cells in Alzheimer's patients. So they actually must like what's in the myelin and they're or hiding in there. I'm not sure. But then, of course, your immune system is going to try to get them out or deal with them. So if they're up against or in the myelin, your immune system is not just attacking the myelin for no reason. It's trying to get rid of the enemy. If it doesn't, the enemy will keep reproducing and eat away and produce poisons and will die. That's what our immune system is there for, is to protect us from death. So those are, and then there's been a huge history of fungus, so Candida for sure. Could there be other parasites? Absolutely. Oh, and then also malaria or a protozoa like malaria or babesia. I've done a 6-part series on that. This has been known for about at least 100 years. There's at least 75 papers, scientific papers on this. They were treating people for malaria in the United States in the early 1900s. And because there was a malaria outbreak, and they found like, oh my gosh, people that have MS were doing incredibly well on malaria drugs. And so then some of the doctors started treating MS patients with malaria drugs and having incredible like reversals, improvements. And then it was all lost, all dropped. And we all went to autoimmune disease. So it's so frustrating. There's a lot of things that have been buried over the years. Those are some of the common ones, Justin. Hello, Kevin. You feel worms in your face? At least that's what it feels like. It could be, like some of the very small ones can, and it can be the larva too. And so if they're moving around, they definitely can. So like it could be in a blood vessel too, right? But it could also be in your gut. So in your gut, you have this highway of nerves that goes from it's called the brain gut or the gut brain axis. And so a lot of symptoms or I should say a lot of the symptoms we feel, neurological symptoms, like even in our brain, they can stem from irritated, inflamed nerves in our intestine. So it could be you have parasites in your brain that can cause this, in your gut that can cause this, or parasites can directly be like, I could tell in the past that I had parasites in my intestine. The flukes, you can feel them. Like I've passed a 5-inch fluke before, and they are incredibly pro-inflammatory, really nasty. And you can feel, it's like a fluttery feeling, them moving around, and it's awful. But I'm glad that I don't have that anymore. So, Kevin, I'm sure that you're on the right track, that you definitely are dealing with some type of parasite, whether it's directly in that area or it's aggravating nerves that are connected to nerves in that area. Hi, Chloe. So can I send the parasite specimen to a parasitologist to use microscopes for parasite identification? Sure, you can. If you're in Canada, like I'm just going to talk about our country here, we've had students that will put some of the worms they passed in their stool sample and to get it tested, like when you do a stool test for parasites in Canada, and they don't even look at it. I think what they do is they just, they pour the content out, they use something to mush it all up, and they just centrifuge it. They probably don't examine it at all until they might take some like small part of it. So it's just absolutely bizarre. And these are worms. When you see the pictures that our students have passed on my blog, there's no mucus. They're like clear roundworms. They're clear flukes. They're very clear that they're worms. So I do know that there is one parasitologist in the United States. He's retired, and you can send your samples to him. It's not super expensive, but he will want you to follow his protocol of herbs, which I think 2 of our students have done that. And like they knew that it wasn't going to be really helpful, but they just wanted to see if they could get things identified, and he can identify. So look around in your area. In Canada, the healthcare system is so tightly regulated that there are only specific labs, and doctors can only send, requisites. We can't even order our own blood work. Everything is so tightly regulated and controlled. It's absolutely horrifying. It's awful. And we just thought that was normal because that's how you grow up. So yes, I would encourage you to. You're in a different country. I would look to see if there are, check with universities. Check to see if there are parasitologists or infectious disease doctors that would be interested in they're super busy. What's in it for them to identify your parasites unless you're paying them for it, right? And then when they we're a random person in the general public, will you analyze my parasites? And they'll be like you're probably going to just send me some food fiber, and they don't know, right? Because they honestly, a lot of them, they don't think we have parasites in developed countries. Our pets do, but for some reason they don't get into us. Yes, it is really painful, Kevin. Hi, Lynn. How many grams of sugar per day? Anna is wondering. So we don't want to have any sugar. The only sugar that could possibly be part of this diet is if you're having that very small serving of fruit first thing in the morning, because we know there's natural sugar in that. But we do not have any sugar. We are going low carb. We're getting down to 30 total grams of carbs. All of the Live Disease-Free Diet guidelines are on our website under research. Look them up there. Hi, Pam. How do I get tested? So that's one thing I haven't explained. So at this time, the best way to be tested is called energy testing. So every living human, plant, animal is called biophysics. We have an energy field around us. And so the simplest way to explain it is that when there's toxins, too many toxins in our body or parasites, then we can have it can affect our energy. And so when you bring the correct remedy into your energy field, it strengthens your energy field, it balances it. They can pick this up with advanced muscle testing or with machines. It is not an exact science. It has a lot of room for bias. There's a lot of potential for bias where, this is why with our students, they will take one sample or one dose, I should say, of each of the common parasite drugs to somebody who does energy testing. And the person that's doing the testing should not know what they're testing. They should not care. It's kind of yes, this one is good. No, that one is not good. Yes, this one is good. So they might have a little machine that has a meter, and they might use a metal pencil type thing where they're touching acupressure points in your fingers, and they can see shifts in your energy with that. But again, we have to use other criteria too. So right now, how our students working with their practitioners, how they get a treatment plan figured is they look at their health history, the health history of their parents. They look at diagnoses. What was this person diagnosed with? Also, their symptoms. So there are very specific symptoms for different types of parasites. So we've got a 14-page symptom assessment form. And this is something that I wish I had the time to develop more, because you can incorporate so much into that. And then also what worms they're passing. So when they're doing the oxidizing enemas and they're passing certain worms, then we're able to see what they're passing and go, okay, yeah, and then the energy test results. So those 6 criteria is really what is so helpful to build a plan. So for example, if the energy test results are we had one practitioner, he's no, you don't test well for any of the parasite drugs, but you do have parasites, and I want you to take these herbs. And it's kind of well, no, there's ulterior motives there, and that's not exactly helpful. So we have to with all of the students we've worked with, their diagnoses, their symptoms, what they're passing, what their energy test results are, we have quite a lot of experience in all of that, because we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, supporting them, coaching them, not being the doctor, not writing prescriptions, not doing any of that, but just coaching them, because our practitioners don't know this yet. So you could go to a practitioner and they'll say, okay, I'll give you 1 dose of ivermectin for 3 days and that'll be good. And you'll be well, no, that's not going to do anything, right? Because then you can say, well, this is really what's recommended. And so then they go, oh, I didn't know that. And as long as it's safe and effective, safe especially, then they will work. Some will. A lot of practitioners are busy. They have a busy life. They have a busy practice. They don't really want to go into parasites. It's not really desirable. So that's a huge, but it's their duty. If it gives people that much like recovery, if it's the cause, that is their job. And if they don't want to treat parasites, they shouldn't be a doctor. That's my humble opinion. Okay, so what are the symptoms that one has when worms are in their body? Oh, I've done a blog post on that. You can look at parasite symptoms and live disease-free. It can range from anything gut related. So whether it's inflammatory bowel, constipation, diarrhea, alternating constipation, incontinence, gas, bloating, fermenting, blood, all of that. So, and then go to the brain. We can have memory issues like terrible memory, terrible brain fog, depression, super like high anxiety where you just feel like you're going to die, like everything's going to fall apart. You can't handle stress. So the cognitive impairment, your heart inflammation in your heart can cause blood vessel inflammation, vasculitis, narrowing of the blood vessels, impacting your red blood cells, causing you to have a low white blood count, like looking at your blood work and like, why is my white blood count always a little lower? Why are my red blood cells off a little bit? Or why are my eosinophils high? Like iron deficiency, like anemia is another one, thyroid issues. Virtually everything is caused by some type of microbe that's out of balance or nutritional deficiency. And most people that I work with, they have taken care of the nutritional deficiency because they're eating really clean, they're taking supplements, they're not deficient in nutrients, they have parasites. So, and then mobility and like numbness and muscle spasms, muscle twitches, everything from not being able to speak to drooling to not being able to use your hands for having like claw, like where your hands just seize up. It's just which parasite is located in which part of the body and which nerve is it impacting. So that's why with multiple sclerosis, it's not just one parasite, because you could have Borrelia in the central nervous system and also in the gut, right? So you can have, and we've had some students, a number of them, that they treat the gut, they still might have lesions, which I've shared. Science knows that parasites cause lesions, but anyhow, they treat the gut and they're completely recovered, but they still have some lesions. And so you want to treat more because that's still, but there's so much that happens in the gut that affects the brain. So it's not always what's in the brain that causes your numbness and your spasticity and your paralysis and your weakness in your legs. Very often it's in your gut. It's that huge highway of nerves between your gut and your brain. What specific herbs do you suggest? I already mentioned those. So there are other herbs that you can use for candida that have been tried and true for a long time. Podarco, olive leaf extract, grapefruit seed extract, oil of oregano. But garlic is really helpful for our students. So this is a little secret that we have. So you can buy freeze-dried garlic tablets, you can buy capsules, you can buy fermented liquid garlic. That's what I started with years ago when I was just learning things. But just the garlic that's in your home, like, disclaimer, our students don't take this until they have the diet in place. Once they're feeling better, then they start to add in things. So then they will chop up garlic. They might start with 1/4 teaspoon of garlic, and they have it chopped up on a spoon. They'll start eating their supper or their lunch or their breakfast. They will put that little bit of garlic chopped up on a spoon in their mouth. They'll swish it down with water, and then they'll finish eating their meal. And then they increase it slowly and slowly. So when you have it in the middle of your meal, it's not going to burn the top of your stomach or the bottom of your stomach, because garlic is hot. But it is incredibly anti-Lyme, antifungal, anti-small parasite. It's really helpful. Anti-protozoa. It's not going to get rid of the big tapeworms, but it is really helpful. So some of our students do work up to a teaspoon with each meal of chopped garlic, or a tablespoon. Be careful, it's a blood thinner. So if you're on blood thinner medication, right, this is not giving you any advice. This is just saying what works for our students, but they're being coached. They're not using this until they're ready. So just like the one student I mentioned, like she couldn't even do a quarter of a teaspoon or an eighth of a teaspoon of garlic, and she would have terrible herxing. But she just kept settling it down and settling it down. She knew in her heart that it was parasites that were like basically taking her out. And so she just would just do like tiny baby steps forward, back off, a little bit more the next time, back off, a little bit more the next time. And then she got to the place where she could start getting them out of her body, which was really exciting. So those are the symptoms. What specific herbs do you suggest? I mentioned that. So for our students, like garlic is not really a herb. It's a culinary, whatever, we use it for food too, but it is possibly a herb. Garlic is right at the top, I would think. And then also wormwood would be second, and myrrh for our students that have neurological diseases. But again, they're not recovering on them. They're helpful, really helpful. They're the most helpful. What are my credentials? Brielle is asking. That's a really good question. So I have a science degree. I'm a certified teacher. I used to work in our local school district. I have recovered from multiple sclerosis. So I have been coaching for 10 years in the Live Disease-Free plan. We have helped like in this one, like the more intensive where I'm supporting them, hundreds of people from over 20 countries. So it's experience, it is science, and it is learning. I know how to be a teacher, and that's what I am. I'm a teacher and I'm a coach. I'm a health educator and I'm a health coach. I'm not a doctor, and I have never pretended to be, and I don't want to be. I love teaching people. I love empowering them, and that's what my credentials are. Thanks for asking, Brielle. Chloe, why are they sensitive to enema sometimes? Well, I don't know. Like, that's something that you should work with your practitioner about. And Brielle, what is your education? So a science degree, certified teacher, a Bachelor of Science, and a PD, I don't know, it's like a certification. I used to be a high school math and science teacher before I started teaching, coaching on a full-time basis. And Brielle, some of us are dying. Yes, I know. And it breaks my heart. I hear when I'm talking to people, when they're calling me, like they listen to these, they find me, they listen to some of my replay videos, then they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so they binge watch a lot of different videos. They believe in their heart they're dealing with parasites. They watch my masterclass training. They book a time to talk with me and to make sure it's a good fit for them. And it just breaks my heart, like, to hear how much they've suffered, how much of their life they've lost. We are going to do some really big celebrating next year, like with our 10th anniversary, because we have some wellness champions that have been, 10 years ago, like we started with a really small group, 10 years ago, and they're still MS free, and it's just amazing. They go off to write books, start podcasts, start wellness clinics, health food company. So it's really, if you want to hear their stories, go to Live Disease Free on YouTube or on our website, probably YouTube. You'll find a playlist there and listen to some of their stories. You will have happy tears when you listen to their stories. And somebody today was telling me that other people that are supporting people with MS, that they're not sharing successes. Well, we have amazing successes. And it's not me. It's not that I'm super special. It's that we are helping people to treat the cause. Then you have the greatest recovery. You have the greatest level of health. You have the longest, healthiest life. This is a skill that you will learn, that you will use for the rest of your life. It's something we should be taught in school. It's something we should be taught before we're sick, so that we can make sure. That's how I've been MS free for 35 years. It's not that I just cured myself. I have been exposed to parasites. I have animals in my life. Like, I have horses, sheep, chickens, and dogs. And I love being outside. I love gardening. I'm not going to give that up, but it's that I was on too many antibiotics. My doctors didn't know that I had parasites, and I pretty much knew I had parasites, but you can't be treated in Canada and in most countries. Brielle, so Chloe, Brielle, let's see here. Let's see, Kennedy. Kennedy, let's see. You know, I totally understand that some people can be skeptical. I totally get that because they have suffered terribly. And the experts that they've looked up to all their life, you know, to hear that you're being betrayed by them, it's really a hard pill to swallow. But if what's working for you, then continue to do it. But for people that find me, they are not living their life. They are not, like, they're not doing the things. They're like literally locked in their homes. They feel terrible. They feel like they're dying. And so this is why it's time for change. It's time. I'm advocating for research in what types of parasites cause multiple sclerosis. I'm advocating for, you know, like, prove Dr. Alan McDonald wrong. Show that there are no parasitic worms in the central nervous system of MS. Show that there is no Borrelia. Like, why is the MS Society talking about that? So I know that it can really rock our world, but this is where, you know, if a person doesn't want to go down this path, if they want to stick with the drugs, that's their prerogative. They can do that. But for people that are just really dissatisfied with the healthcare that they're getting, and they're really dissatisfied with their quality of life, that's what saved my life, is I just didn't settle. I just kept looking and looking, and I tried many things over the years. All right, and let's see. Any other questions? Oh, I see here. So there's somebody in the program. Okay, that's one student that's in the program just sharing their experience. Thank you so much for being such an awesome wellness champion. And Alberto, hello. Okay, so a couple of last questions. I'll let you go. This is the longest live event I think I've done, so on Facebook and YouTube, but really important. I think that I've covered everything. The best testing we've talked about, and ivermectin we talked about, and fenbendazole, like how they're not going to cure you, and how the dangers of self-medicating. Also, negative parasite tests in the stool. And this is coming from like the very best parasitologists, like this is from Dr. Klinghardt, who has talked to the very best parasitologists. They're picking up 10%, if that, of the parasites that are in us. All right, I think there's more. Just type your questions in the question box, and then we will answer them. And I will definitely do another one of these because I see that it's a really popular topic and it's giving a lot of people hope, which is so awesome. All right. So with that, I'm going to let you guys go. We've gone on a long time. And please, you know, if you do start to even change your diet, which you can access on our website, livediseasefree.com, and if you start to notice significant symptom improvements, then make sure to share that with me, because that is amazing. I love to hear the successes. When you get to the place you're like, Pam, I've looked at the research. Some people have even passed worms and they say, I know I have parasites, and you need support. You need a step-by-step plan. Make sure to watch my masterclass training. I share all the steps we take to recover. And then from there, if you need support, if you don't have a practitioner that can help you, make sure to reach out, make sure to fill out the form, and book a time in my calendar, and I would be honored to chat with you to make sure it's a good fit. With that, I'm gonna let you guys go. And if you enjoy what I'm sharing with you, this is years of experience. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And that really helps us to get out to more people that are trying to self-medicate themselves, treating parasites, and they're not getting anywhere and actually are harming themselves. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye for now.